You're putting the focus internally, which means the energy is no longer constantly going in that direction towards people, places, and things you can't control. In other words, an endless drain of energy. And you're putting them in here where you can actually make a difference. You can actually have some control. You're focusing internally, and you really get to know yourself in deep and profound ways. Hi, I'm Barb Nangle. I want to welcome you to my podcast, Fragmented to Whole, Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery. If you're tired of feeling fragmented and overwhelmed, this podcast is your guide to creating a life of wholeness, authenticity, and healthy boundaries. I'm a woman in recovery who is also a boundaries coach and speaker. I share raw and honest insights from my own journey and the principles of 12-Step Recovery. Discover how to set boundaries without guilt or shame, overcome people-pleasing tendencies, manage your emotions effectively, cultivate a stronger sense of self, and build healthier relationships. My approach is raw, honest, and sometimes a little bit, a lot sweary. I'm an avid beachcomber and a formerly closeted fan of the Hallmark Channel, especially Christmas movies. I wear fingerless gloves almost all year round because my hands are always cold. And I love taking pictures of license plates with my initials BN on them. I don't speak for or endorse any particular 12-step program of recovery. Though I'm a huge fan of 12-step recovery and a member of two such fellowships, I cannot speak for them. If you're ready for real talk and practical tools for transformation, keep listening. This is episode 327, 5 ways to keep the focus on you to create internal safety. Today, I'm sharing a guest appearance on the Friendly Circle Berlin call. It's an international recovery community. I tell the story of my codependent bottom, how ACA and OA shaped my healing, and why emotional sobriety is the centerpiece of my life. You'll learn 5 ways to keep the focus on you so you can create internal safety from the inside out. Friendly Circle Berlin is an international recovery community that welcomes people from any fellowship, and its focus is on emotional sobriety. If you'd like to learn more, go to friendlycircleberlin.org or find the link in the show notes. Heads up, I'm returning to weekly episodes in December. Now let's get into it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Hi, I'm Barb. I'm an adult child codependent and abstinent compulsive overeater, and it is such a pleasure to speak in a room where I can talk about all of my recovery, because usually if I'm in an ACA meeting, I can't talk about my food recovery, and if I'm in an OA meeting, I can't talk about my ACA recovery, and I'm a whole human who has all of these things. So it's such a pleasure to be able to talk about all of that. So I hit a codependent bottom in the spring or the winter of 2014-15 when I invited a homeless friend that I met through church to come and stay at my home during a snowstorm. And the timing is actually really interesting because I met him right around the same time that I volunteered to run a project at my church that was serving homeless people. And I felt it was like, whoa, divine intervention that I got to be introduced to a homeless person right when I was going to do a project serving homeless people. And it was like God put him there to help me understand the world from the point of homeless people so that I was serving homeless people, not the homeless. And that I think that to some extent that was true, but I now know that he was basically an angel sent to me to help me hit a codependent bottom and land in 12-step recovery. So his name was Dan, and we had been friends for probably 2.5, 3 months. And there was a really bad snowstorm here in New Haven, and I knew he hated staying in homeless shelters. He mostly didn't, but during a really bad snowstorm, you kind of have to. So I sent him a text message that he was invited to stay at my home, and he accepted, of course. And then he stayed another time. And within a few weeks, he was practically living with me. And I soon felt trapped in my own home. So he was a self-proclaimed addict and alcoholic. I think now on reflection, he may have also had some kind of personality disorder, because this guy fucked with my head in a way that I had never experienced. And one day I was in therapy and I was talking about him. In the middle of a sentence, I went, oh my God, do you think I need to go to Al-Anon? And my therapist was like, yes. So whatever I put into Google looking for an Al-Anon meeting, I don't know what I put in, but the word codependent came up. And I was like, what? What is this word? Now, as Millie mentioned, I was in therapy for literally 37 years, not continuously, but damn close before recovery. So I started therapy when I was 15. I was 52 when I got in recovery. I read a gajillion self-help books, workshops, workbooks, retreats, spiritual groups, seminars, support groups, like you name it. And I feel like all of that stuff, like I was trying, that stuff just sort of scratched the surface of the iceberg of my life, and recovery melted the iceberg of my life. So for me, 12-step recovery is where it's at. And my goal and my mission in life is to carry the message of recovery to those who still suffer. And I actually heard somebody say recently, deliver the message of recovery to those who still suffer. And I really like that, because carry sounds like it could be a burden, and it's not a burden at all. It's a blessing to be able to be here and to be able to do this. So I started in Codependence Anonymous, and I very quickly felt a sense of relief. And I think partly from knowing there's this thing, codependence, that describes me. I'm not the only one, and there's a program of recovery. But I also remember saying to my therapist, forgive me, I swear, and I apologize if that offends you. I'm sorry, but this is just how I talk. I said, what the fuck else don't I know about myself? Like, how is it possible after all these years of introspection and self-work that I'd never heard of codependence and I don't know this? And she said, Barbara, I think for you, codependence is a unifying concept where it pulls together a bunch of things that you did know about yourself. You just didn't know they were related. And I think that's true. At first, I was like, she's just saying that to make me feel better. Well, I felt a sense of relief, and I remember very soon, like 3 or 4 weeks into it, saying to somebody, I think I need to be reparented. But I didn't know reparenting was a thing. I don't know where I got that term from, but I said that to somebody. And then about 6 weeks into going to CODA, I went away to some friends that live in another state, one of whom, she had been in AA for 10 years, and she had always just raved about how just dramatically her life was turned around by AA. And I said, you're going to love this. I'm going to Codependence Anonymous. She was like, this is amazing. Let's see if we can find a CODA meeting while you're here, and we'll go together. And she couldn't. But she found an ACA meeting, which I had heard of as ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. Never occurred to me that I qualified for it. And I feel like I had heard of it as long as I could remember, but I also never, I was like, why would adult children of alcoholics need me? I didn't have any grasp of that. So her dad's an alcoholic, so she qualified. So I was like, I'll go for you. And I walk in, and in the opening readings, they say, we reparent ourselves. And I was like, what? And then they read the 14 traits of an adult child, which is affectionately called the laundry list, which in the United States, that a little bit makes sense to people. I can't imagine how that translates in other languages, but anyway, they read the 14 traits of an adult child, and my friend Heidi tells me that I sobbed the whole meeting. I don't remember that, but I remember being like, these are my people. This is my place. I bought the big red book, which is the fellowship text, and I bought the yellow 12-step workbook, came home to New Haven, Connecticut, and started immediately going to ACA, to a co-ed big red book meeting. Within a few weeks, a women's meeting started in that same church, and I started going to that meeting. And then around that same time, me and 3 other women decided to get together and work the 12 steps together using the yellow 12-step workbook, because at that time, there were no sponsors at all around here in ACA. And so I started working the steps, and I just it was dramatic, the change. About a year into that, I decided to let go of CODA. I wasn't actively working a CODA program. I was going to meetings, but I also was not seeing and hearing the kind of recovery in CODA and the meetings that I went to that I was in ACA. I knew a couple people were working the steps in that program because I saw them doing it when they were doing it in the church. But people would occasionally mention that they had a sponsor, but nobody was really saying like, this is what you do. Whereas in the Big Red Book, it was really clear. Like, I feel like the Big Red Book was my sponsor in the beginning. I was getting the healing through doing the 12 steps. So I decided to let CODA go. And that turned out to be a higher powered intervention because I went to CODA on Monday nights and I had thought to myself, well, let me see, maybe I'll pick up another ACA meeting on Monday nights. Well, it just so happened I was doing step 4 in ACA and I was hitting bottom with sugar for some reason at that same time. And one of the women I was doing the 12 steps with had started talking about her relationship with food in our step meeting. And then she started talking about Overeaters Anonymous. And I remember I was like aghast at what she was sharing with us. And it wasn't even what she was sharing. It was that she was talking about food. And I was like, oh my God, I do those things. I think those things. So I didn't know this, but she was like 12 stepping me into OA. And so I went to a workshop with her and I didn't realize it was a workshop. I thought it was just a regular weekly support meeting. And there was a bunch of speakers. And I was like, oh my God, I'm a compulsive overeater. I didn't even know that was a thing. So I am now down over 100 pounds from my top weight. I don't know what that translates into kilograms. It's a lot. And I've been in ACA for 10 and a half years. I've been abstinent and in OA for 9.5 years. I've been at my goal weight for 7.5 years, something like that. And recovery has become the foundation of my life. And I'm so glad to be talking about emotional sobriety today because that is the most important aspect of my recovery. If I lose my emotional sobriety, then all the rest of it goes down the tubes for me. I know that some of you met me because I did a 3-part series on boundaries for the Friendly Circle in March. And I've actually had an insight since that time about boundaries that I feel like has everything to do with emotional sobriety. And that is that I believe that when we're learning how to build healthy boundaries, what we're doing is creating a sense of internal safety. So I am emotionally sober when I depend on myself for my emotional sobriety. So I really listened when the preamble was being read because it talked about Bill saying that his sense of self, wholeness, and well-being was dependent on external events. And external events, I know he also means other people. So people, places, and things. So the opposite of focusing externally is focusing internally. And this is really what I learned in the boundary building process. So I learned so many things in 12-step recovery that just I never learned before, especially about myself. So all those years of therapy and all that self-help stuff, I never knew that I had trauma. I never knew that I was codependent. I didn't know about intergenerational family dysfunction. I didn't know I was a compulsive overeater. I knew I wasn't an addict or an alcoholic because I basically stopped drinking and stopped smoking weed, but I didn't like quit and make it a decision. But I abused them terribly before. I didn't know that I had victim mentality, which was hands down the biggest paradigm shift. I didn't know that I was dishonest. I truly believed that I was dishonest. I didn't know that I was a people-pleasing rescuer, fixer, savior, enabler. I didn't know that I had wildly unrealistic. I mean, I could go on. Like all of these things came up very clearly in my first couple of years of recovery alone, and literally none of them came up in any of the therapy or any of the other stuff. But because I think my core wound is codependence, which is a result of trauma, because codependence is my core wound and boundaries are essentially the antidote to codependence, learning how to build healthy boundaries was really a game changer for me. And so I want to say a couple things about that before I talk about what I think that has to do with emotional sobriety. So one is I had the privilege a few years ago to work on two different WSO literature committees in the ACA program. And I got to meet all kinds of people who've been in recovery for a long time. And there were two different guys that I met, both of whom have over 30 years in AA and ACA. And they both said to me in similar ways, but at different times, the same thing, which was this. It doesn't say in AA in the steps, put down the drink, but you can't recover without putting down the drink. It doesn't say in ACA, set boundaries in the steps, but you can't recover in ACA without setting boundaries. And to me, that's related to promise number 1 in the ACA program, which is we will discover our real identities. What boundaries do is they help you figure out, like, what are the bounds of me? Where do I end and other people begin? What do I want, like, need, prefer? What's okay with me? What's not okay with me? What's my responsibility? What's not my responsibility? Or, what some of us say is like, what's in my hula hoop and what's not? I was such a chameleon and such a people pleaser that, of course, there were some things about myself that I knew to be true and have always been true. But there was a lot of barb that was up for negotiation. So, like, even when I drank, I started drinking beer when I was young because that's what people drank. And then I met a guy and I dated him for years who was into wine. So I became a wine drinker. And then I dated a guy who was really into Jack Daniels. So I drank Jack Daniels and Diet Coke. And then I met a guy who was a connoisseur of beer. And I learned that I really like Belgian beer. So like my alcohol drink wasn't even my drink. Like I morphed my identity. So if you don't know those things about yourself, if you don't know where you end and other people begin or what you want, like, need, and prefer, you don't know your real identity. And if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what your identity is, then you kind of don't know where you belong. Especially if you're like me and you were like a people-pleasing rescuer, because you're like, wait, am I here because they really want me to be here? Or am I here because I keep giving, 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 giving? And if I stop giving, maybe they would let go of me. So we don't know what our identity is and we don't know where we belong. And it wasn't really safe for us to express those things or to develop those things when we were growing up if we grew up in dysfunction. And so for me, learning how to build healthy boundaries has been me taking the focus off of the external world and putting it in here. And so I've learned through the process of recovery a variety of ways to keep the focus on myself. And before I go into those ways of keeping the focus on myself, I want to say that keeping the focus on yourself has absolutely nothing to do with being selfish. So I don't know about other languages, but in in American English, the idea of being called selfish, especially for a woman, is just horrifying. It's like I actually had a client tell me she'd rather be called a whore than selfish. Like, what is going on in our society that a woman would rather be called that than be called selfish? And I think it's almost used like an epithet, but it's not selfish to take care of yourself. So some of the ways that I've learned to keep the focus on myself are to ask myself, like, what do I want here? Or what do I need here? Like, I never asked. It was always like, what does he need? What do they need? What does the situation need? So when you start asking yourself, what do I need? You're probably not going to know. And that's okay. You just keep asking because eventually you will know. And then once stuff starts to bubble up that you're like, oh, here's what I would prefer, you're probably not going to give it to yourself. And that's okay. You just keep asking because eventually you will develop the wherewithal to give those things to yourself. So that's my number one way to keep the focus on yourself. Another way is to ask yourself, what's my part here? Like, that is the greatest gift of recovery, was understanding my part in things. I literally had no idea what I was doing to create the chaos in my life and to exacerbate the existing chaos around me. So if you are involved in a certain kind of dynamic that repeats itself in multiple areas of your life, I have news for you. You are the common denominator. And this is good news. This is not bad news, because if everybody else was the problem, if the world was the problem, then you're screwed. But if you're the problem, then you get to actually be the solution. And when you learn this thing about yourself, it's info, not ammo. This is information for you to learn, integrate, and grow from. It is not ammunition. That's another thing. I heard that info, not ammo on a podcast early in recovery. And I was like, what? Because I realized I used everything to beat myself up, even though I always felt like I liked myself, felt like a powerful woman of agency, thought of myself as a very positive person. So what's my part? And then what might I do differently? So you have the opportunity to change when you realize you actually have a part in things. The third way that I've learned to keep the focus on myself is to mind my own business. As a former rescuer, fixer, savior, I was constantly like jumping in to rescue, fix, and save people. Some people who didn't even want help or see their situations as requiring help. I also gave an enormous amount of unsolicited advice. And what's really funny is the area in life where I gave the most unsolicited advice was in the romantic relationship area. And until I got in recovery, actually until I was 55, when I met my sweetheart, I never had a healthy relationship. I had not like we say in the United States, we say a string of relationships. I didn't have a string. I had a rope of dysfunctional relationships behind me. And so I would give relationship advice to people. And so it's really wonderful to be helpful to people and to give people advice if they want it. So if you want to be helpful to people, yay, you. Please get their consent. Ask them, like, are you looking for help? Or are you just venting? Or say something like, I had a similar experience. Would it be helpful if I told you what I did? So don't just foist your help on other people, like mind your own business or get their consent. And then a fourth way that I've learned to keep the focus on myself is to ask, like, whose feelings are these? So what I needed was like you all to be okay so that I could be okay. And I especially needed you to be okay with me so that I could be okay. So what I was trying to do was manage your feelings. Like you can't be upset. If you're upset, I'm everything in my power to get rid of your upsetness. And here's the thing, people get to be upset and they get to be upset with you because those are their feelings and they're theirs to manage, not yours. So I not only was I much more permeable and basically like felt other people's feelings, which is partly why I needed them to be okay. And I no longer have that. There's I don't know how this works, but there's something that happens as you build healthy boundaries where it's almost like this energetic force field develops around you and it like repels other people's stuff in this way that like I'm not doing anything to make it happen. It just like energetically happens. So I'm not feeling other people's feelings anymore, but I also understand my feelings are mine and they're my business and my responsibility. And your feelings are yours and your business and your responsibility. So I keep the focus on me and my feelings. I'm not trying to hurt other people's feelings. And if I find out that I have, then I apologize. And then the fifth way that I've learned to keep the focus on myself is by taking really good care of myself. So, as a former like abusive drinker and weed smoker, and compulsive overeater and toxic relationship and toxic workplace person, I've abused the crap out of myself. So I not only want to take care of myself now going forward, but I want to kind of like backfill some health in there for me. So I want to take really good care of myself. I used to buy healthy food, let it rot in my refrigerator and throw it away because I didn't want to eat it because it was healthy. Like that's just, that's part of the unmanageability and insanity of life. I don't do that anymore. I eat things for the fact that they're healthy for me. But when I talk about like taking good care of yourself, what I mean is taking care of your physical, emotional, social, psychological, spiritual health. What gives you energy and what drains you? So do less of the things that drain you and do more of the things that energize you. So there's a metaphor that I've heard of that I really love, and it's this idea that you want to pour from the overflow, not from an empty cup. Well, the only way you can have overflow in your cup is if you fill it first. So what gives you energy? And I'm not talking about like getting a massage once a week. I'm talking about daily intermittent things that fuel you. You get to enjoy your life. You get to relax. You get to rest. You get to do things that are fun, that fuel your tank so that you can really take care of yourself. So again, there was 5 ways to keep the focus on yourself. So what do I want or need? What's my part? Am I minding my business? Whose feelings are these? And taking really good care of yourself. So when you do all of that kind of stuff, you're putting the focus internally, which means the energy is no longer constantly going in that direction towards people, places, and things you can't control. In other words, an endless drain of energy. And you're putting them in here where you can actually make a difference. You can actually have some control. You're focusing internally and you really get to know yourself in deep and profound ways. And, one of the things that I noticed in my relationship inventory in ACA is that all my relationships, I knew, like I happen to date men. So all the men on my inventory, I knew, like to me, the pattern was that they're emotionally unavailable. And that's true. But the real pattern was codependence. And I watched the codependence get worse and worse and worse over time. So I realized through the process of recovery that I thought that I was just attracting emotionally unavailable men. I didn't realize that I was also attracted to them. That became clear in recovery. So I had a part in that. And the other thing I realized is the reason that I was attracted to them and they were attracted to me was that I was emotionally unavailable, which makes sense. Because what man who is emotionally available would stay in a relationship with a woman who is emotionally unavailable? So I became emotionally available to myself first. And this goes towards what I'm talking about with the emotional sobriety, right? So emotional sobriety, like to use the opposite of Bill talking about it, it's like I have a sense of self. I have a sense of wholeness and I have a sense of well-being, which I can't get from anybody other than me. And I think for me, the core thing that shifted for me to go from having no boundaries for 50 something years to having such healthy boundaries that I now coach people on it is that I came to care more what I think of me than what other people do. Now, this doesn't mean that I don't care at all what other people think of me. Of course I do. I'm a human, also recovering people pleaser, right? What it means is that I used to be willing to throw my integrity out the window and lie and say that I was okay when I was dying inside, say that things were okay with me when they were not, say yes to things I didn't want to do, and manipulate people into trying to be pleased with me. And I'm no longer willing to do that. So my being an honest woman of integrity is way more important to me than what you think of me. Like I want you to approve of me, but I don't with clause need you to approve of me the way that I used to. And partly that's because I like being an honest woman of integrity and I care what I think of me. And also because you get to think and feel whatever you want. Like 99.999% of people's opinion of you, it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with them. And I really get that now. Now, it doesn't mean I don't ever get like rocked by things that happen to me, but I can be rocked by things now, but I'm not shattered by them the way that I used to because I'm whole now. And the reason I say that is I feel like some of you know, I have a podcast. It's called Fragmented to Whole, Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery. And that's because I felt like I was a bunch of fragmented pieces floating around in space. And recovery, especially the part about building healthy boundaries, integrated all of those fragments into one coherent whole. So that's why I can't be shattered anymore the way that I used to, because I'm whole. I have integrity. Those parts have been integrated. And the whole reason I started my podcast, not because I thought it would have anything to do with my business, which is funny because that's now the number one way I get clients, but it was because I was like, there's all this wisdom in recovery. Let's get it out into the world. Like, how did I not know any of these things? But this process of really like getting to know myself and understanding, learning how to feel my feelings, get in touch with my emotions, experience them, name them, express them in healthy ways, taught me how to tolerate what was going on in the world around me. I don't need everything in the world around me to be perfect. So there's a proverb that I learned well before recovery that I thought I knew what it meant, and I totally didn't. And it's, I think it's a Chinese proverb, and it says, it's easier to put slippers on your feet than to carpet the world. And that sounds really obvious, but like to stretch that metaphor out to say, like, okay, the world has sharp, jagged edges. And wouldn't it be nice if we could put a nice, cushy carpet on it so we'd never stub our toe? Well, that's ridiculous. So how about it's a lot easier to just put slippers on your feet? So I've learned that rather than trying to get people, places, and things to be the way I want to, what are the slippers that I get to put on my feet? And so I've learned that I get to be stable within myself. I've created a sense of safety and protection within myself so that I can handle it when I set a boundary with someone and they get upset with me. I can live with that. Like, I want your approval, but I don't need it. And if you disapprove of my boundary, you get to disapprove of it. But I also get to still do whatever I need to do to protect myself and to take care of myself. And just briefly, in my last minute or so, I do want to say I do an enormous amount of reparenting. My last almost 3 years in recovery, a lot of my focus has been on reparenting. And there's a line in the ACA fellowship text, and it's that I love, and it's, we can backfill the love that we did not get as children. And that is what I do in my reparenting. I am giving the love to my inner children that they did not get as children. And I feel like it's literally changing my DNA. And I do IFS, internal family systems therapy, and I had a session right before this, and it was a really incredible session where, I had a couple of parts that really need to figure things out and understand things, just really like let go of managing that stuff. And the amount of relief that my inner child felt was absolutely enormous. So if you're not doing inner child work, that is yet another way to really contribute to your emotional sobriety. And that being said, I will stop there before the timer goes off. Thank you for letting me share. Let's be honest, the holidays can be hard. You're pulled in 100 directions trying to do it all, and it's easy to lose yourself in the process. My Holiday Boundaries Express is 3 private coaching sessions to help you reclaim your peace, set guilt-free boundaries, and actually enjoy the season. The 3 themes are personal peace and self-care, family festivities with fun, and social serenity. It's just $700, and if you choose to continue with Unshakable You, that full amount is discounted from your enrollment fee. And here's something new. I'm lowering the price on Unshakable You for now. The world feels shaky and unpredictable, and I want to help create a more secure world by helping more women feel secure within themselves. Because when you're grounded and unshakable, everyone around you benefits too. Visit higherpowercc.com/holiday to start your journey toward peace, inside and out. If you like this podcast, and I'm guessing you did because you're still listening, you will also love my weekly newsletter, Friday Fragments, which has short essays similar to the podcast. You can check it out at fridayfragments.news. That's fridayfragments.news. If you haven't already subscribed to my podcast on your favorite podcast outlet, please do that. It helps carry the message to more people. I started this podcast because there was so much wisdom in recovery that just wasn't making its way out into the world. So I want as many people as possible to hear it. I'd also love it if you'd leave a 5-star rating or a review, which you can do on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find it so they can get the benefits that you've gotten from listening. If someone in particular came to mind when you listen to this episode, please share it with them. And my favorite place to hang out on social media is Instagram. I'm at Higher Power Coaching. Please DM me there. I'd love to hear what you got from this episode. I run private and group coaching programs on building healthy boundaries. Whether you need help with boundaries in your personal, professional, or romantic life, I can help. Head on over to barbchat.net where you can get on my calendar for a free 30-minute Better Boundaries consultation. I also do short-term situational coaching to help people make it through specific situations they're going through, such as divorce, empty nesting, preparing for retirement, or any phase where their identity is shifting. Regardless of the type of coaching, my ideal client is someone who is ripe for change. If that's you, I'd love to work with you. My goal with all my work is to help you make lasting changes in your life, like I've made deep, lasting changes in my life. Remember, it's never too late to recover. No one is beyond hope, and healing is possible. Thanks for listening.